The prestigious Hollywood Environmental Leadership Awards buzzed with anticipation. Camera flashes created a constellation across the red carpet as celebrities posed in designer eco-friendly attire. Heads turned when Karoline Leavitt stepped onto the crimson pathway. Her simple blue dress stood out among the extravagant gowns. Security guards exchanged confused glances. Her name wasn't on their list. Jason Momoa emerged from a hybrid limousine to thunderous applause. His towering figure commanded attention, clad in a custom-made hemp suit. He waved to adoring fans, flashing his signature smile. Their eyes met across the crowded space. Jason's smile faltered momentarily before he whispered to his publicist, who immediately began typing furiously on her phone. Karoline moved with purpose toward the press area, reporters now noticing her presence. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The event coordinator rushed over, clipboard clutched against her chest. "Ms. Leavitt, we weren't expecting you tonight. I have something important to address." The coordinator's earpiece buzzed. She listened, then nodded nervously. "Mr. Momoa's team has concerns about your attendance." Karoline squared her shoulders. "I'm sure they do." The coordinator led Karoline to a restricted area away from the main cameras. Jason Momoa continued his photo shoot, muscles flexing as he posed with the night's sustainability award he would present later. A reporter thrust a microphone toward Jason. "Your recent comments about environmental policymakers have gone viral. Any follow-up thoughts?" Jason laughed, his deep voice carrying across the space. "Look, when politicians with zero science background start lecturing about climate solutions, it's like watching kids play dress-up, especially those right-wing ones who suddenly pretend to care about the planet." The crowd chuckled appreciatively. "Anyone specific you're referring to?" "That Leavitt woman from New Hampshire comes to mind, criticizing my foundation's work when she's never even stepped foot in the communities we help. Maybe stick to your talking points and leave the real environmental work to people who actually understand it." Karoline stood motionless, absorbing every word as the screens around her broadcast Jason's comments live. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, colleagues warning her about what was unfolding. Reporters spotted Karoline and swarmed toward her, shouting questions. "What's your response to Jason Momoa's criticism? Did you come here to confront him? Is it true you called his foundation a Hollywood vanity project?" Jason noticed the commotion and strolled over, towering over the gathering. Camera crews pivoted to capture the unexpected confrontation. "Well, speak of the devil. Didn't expect to see you in the lion's den. I go where the truth needs to be." "Heard." Jason spread his arms wide, playing to the audience. "Truth? I've spent millions on clean water initiatives, while politicians like you block environmental legislation. Then you have the audacity to question my foundation's numbers." Screens around them began playing clips from Jason's viral interview from last week, where he had specifically called out Karoline. "These politicians sit in their offices making decisions about communities they've never visited." Karoline Leavitt's comments about my foundation were not just uninformed, they were dangerous. She's never seen a child drink clean water for the first time because of our work. Event staff huddled nearby, debating whether to intervene. The ratings were skyrocketing as the unscripted drama unfolded. Karoline's phone rang. She answered briefly, her expression shifting from tension to resolve. "My husband's on his way." Jason laughed dismissively. "Bringing reinforcements? This isn't a battlefield." "No, he's bringing the truth." Jason leaned closer, lowering his voice but still audible to nearby microphones. "Your truth better be good. I've got 15 years of environmental work and millions of supporters. You've got what? Political talking points?" Attendees frantically posted clips of the encounter. Momoa vs. Leavitt began trending within minutes. Online comments overwhelmingly favored Jason, celebrating his takedown of another climate-denying politician. Despite the growing hostility from the crowd, Karoline maintained her composure. "Mr. Momoa, I came prepared for this conversation, are you?" "Always. But let's do this properly on stage, during my presentation. If you're so confident in your facts, you can share them with everyone." Security approached, requesting Karoline leave the restricted area. Jason waved them off. "No, let her stay. The public deserves to see this conversation." The crowd parted as Daniel Whitmore, Karoline's husband, entered carrying a leather portfolio. His calm demeanor contrasted with the chaotic atmosphere. Jason's team whispered urgently in his ear, but he brushed them off with confident nonchalance. "Is that your husband?" What's he going to do? Bore us with spreadsheets? Daniel extended his hand professionally. Mr. Momoa, I believe we have some numbers to discuss. Jason's expression flickered with the first hint of uncertainty as he glanced at the portfolio. The award ceremony commenced with glittering fanfare. Jason sat prominently in the front row, occasionally glancing back to where Karoline and Daniel had been seated deliberately far from the stage. Event organizers had tried to defuse the situation by keeping them separated. The event host addressed the elephant in the room. We've got quite the unexpected guest list tonight. I see politics and Hollywood are mixing it up backstage. Twitter's already exploding. Laughter rippled through the audience as cameras panned to Karoline, who smiled thinly but kept her composure. When introduced to present the Environmental Visionary Award, Jason bounded onto the stage with charismatic energy. He began with prepared remarks about his foundation's achievements, pointedly looking toward Karoline. Real change happens in the field, not in press releases. Our foundation has provided clean water to 17 communities across 3 continents. Those are real results, not political sound bites. Applause thundered through the hall. As Jason continued, Karoline whispered to Daniel, who nodded and tapped something into his tablet. Within moments, fact-check tweets began appearing online, challenging specific statistics Jason had just mentioned. Split-screen feeds displayed on monitors throughout the venue showed Jason speaking alongside. Real-time social media reactions. Initially dominated by his supporters, the tide began shifting as Daniel's fact-checks gained traction. Jason's rhythm faltered slightly as he glanced at the screens. He recovered quickly, doubling down on emotional appeals. I've held children, whose lives were saved by our clean water initiatives. What have politicians done except obstruct progress with red tape? A reporter approached Karoline during a break, microphone extended. Care to respond to Mr. Momoa's claims about your criticism of his foundation? Cameras swiveled her way. The room quieted. I support genuine environmental initiatives wholeheartedly. My concerns were never about the mission, but about transparency and accountability. Americans deserve to know how charitable funds are actually used. Jason's publicist frantically typed on her phone, watching as Karoline's measured response began gaining positive engagement online. They huddled during the commercial break, showing Jason something on a tablet that made his jaw clench. A former employee of Jason's foundation approached Karoline, shaking her hand as photographers captured the moment. Their brief conversation sent ripples through the audience, as speculation ran wild. During intermission, Daniel moved methodically through the crowd, showing specific pages from his portfolio to selected journalists. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to interest as they examined the documents. A respected environmental journalist posted a thread analyzing the foundation's financial reports that Daniel had shared. The thread highlighted discrepancies between claimed projects and documented expenditures. Returning to the stage for his award presentation, Jason addressed the brewing controversy directly. I see we're playing politics tonight. Let me be crystal clear, every dollar our foundation receives goes directly to environmental causes. Anyone suggesting otherwise is pushing a political agenda. Rather than responding verbally, Karoline authorized Daniel to share the foundation's public tax filings with major outlets. These showed only 31% of donations reaching actual environmental projects. With the remainder going to administrative costs, events, and promotional activities, the celebrity audience began visibly taking sides. Some moved seats to distance themselves from Jason, while others closed ranks around him. The event producers frantically adjusted camera angles to minimize the obvious division unfolding. Sensing the shifting atmosphere, Jason changed tactics, his voice breaking with emotion. When you're in villages with no clean water, bureaucratic details seem pretty meaningless. Our work saves lives while politicians sit in air-conditioned offices criticizing from afar. Daniel approached the press area distributing packets containing verified testimonials from communities where Jason's foundation had promised projects that never materialized. Journalists began cross-referencing these with the foundation's promotional materials. The live audience sentiment tracker displayed on the venue's screens showed a dramatic shift. What began as 82% supporting Jason had dropped to 58% and was falling rapidly as new information circulated. During another break, Jason approached Karoline's table, cameras trailing him. Pretty clever ambush. Did you plan this hit job for weeks or just throw it together after my interview? This isn't an ambush, Mr. Momoa. It's accountability. Daniel stood, matching Jason's intense gaze without yielding ground. He placed a single photograph on the table. Jason at a lavish foundation fundraiser contrasted with the primitive conditions. In a village that had been promised aid, the villagers in Mukuru are still waiting for the water filtration system your foundation announced 3 years ago. Jason's publicist attempted damage control, pulling him away while announcing to nearby press that they would release a comprehensive financial report in the coming days. As the ceremony continued, technology journalists broke a story containing an email chain from Jason's foundation discussing how to massage the numbers for their annual report. Though inconclusive alone, it added to the growing narrative. Several celebrities scheduled to appear on stage with Jason suddenly developed scheduling conflicts. The event's host awkwardly filled time as backstage chaos ensued. Refusing to be cowed, Jason returned to the stage for his final presentation segment. His voice carried a harder edge. It's easy to attack people trying to make a difference, much harder to actually do something positive for the planet. Our foundation will continue our work regardless of politically motivated attacks. When approached for comment, Karoline delivered her clearest statement yet. This isn't about politics. It's about promises made to vulnerable communities. It's about donors who believed their money would provide clean water, but instead funded galas and promotional campaigns. Americans believe in accountability, regardless of celebrity status. Daniel timed the release perfectly, sharing with journalists a compilation video of Jason's promises to specific communities, contrasted with current footage showing no improvements. The video spread like wildfire across platforms. Cameras caught Jason backstage, angrily confronting his team. How did they get this? Who's feeding them information? Entertainment industry executives began publicly taking positions, with several distancing themselves from future foundation events until greater transparency is established. Financial journalists constructed a damning timeline showing how the foundation's administrative costs had grown proportionally with Jason's rising fame, while actual project expenditures had decreased. Rather than continuing to speak, Karoline let the evidence speak for itself. Her strategic silence drew attention to Jason's increasingly defensive responses. As the formal ceremony ended, the planned celebratory atmosphere had evaporated. Attendees clustered in tense discussion groups rather than mingling freely as they prepared to leave. Daniel handed a final document to a senior investigative journalist. Bank transfers showing foundation funds being used to secure Jason's appearance at environmental events where he received personal appearance fees. The evening's official afterparty loomed ahead, where Jason was scheduled to give remarks and where Karoline and Daniel had just received unexpected invitations.
The confrontation was far from over. The exclusive afterparty transformed from celebration to confrontation ground. Influential figures huddled in corners, whispering as they watched Karoline and Daniel enter. Jason stood surrounded by his remaining
supporters near the stage. Television crews adjusted lighting and positions, sensing the brewing storm. Live streams showed record viewership numbers as audiences tuned in for the unfolding drama. The room hushed as Jason approached the podium, his trademark smile replaced by determined intensity. The cameras zoomed in on his face, catching the slight tension in his jaw. I've dedicated years to environmental causes while others just talk. Tonight's unexpected drama doesn't change the thousands of lives we've improved. One politician with an agenda can't erase that reality. Daniel quietly connected his tablet to the venue's AV system with the help of a sympathetic technician. Karoline reviewed notes on her phone. Calm amid the brewing storm, Jason's voice carried across the silent room. If Ms. Leavitt wants to discuss foundation finances, let her come up here and have that conversation publicly. No more whispers and insinuations. Without hesitation, Karoline walked toward the stage. The crowd parted, phones recording every step. She ascended with measured confidence as Jason stepped aside, gesturing dramatically to the microphone. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Momoa. Jason crossed his arms. Let's hear these accusations directly. This isn't about accusations. It's about facts. The screens throughout the venue suddenly displayed a simple chart showing the foundation's declining project expenditures alongside rising administrative costs. Gasps rippled through the audience. Administrative costs include project planning and development. Cherry-picking numbers is a political trick. These are your foundation's own numbers, filed with the IRS. The screens shifted to video testimonials from village elders in communities promised water filtration systems. Their expressions of disappointment and confusion needed no translation. We waited 3 years. The foundation people came, took many pictures, then disappeared. Jason's publicist rushed toward the AV controls but was blocked by security, who had been quietly instructed to allow the presentation to continue. The venue had decided transparency served everyone's interest. Projected metrics showed the confrontation trending globally. Celebrity attendees began issuing statements distancing themselves from the foundation while expressing continued support for environmental causes. Jason's voice took on a dangerous edge. 15 years of environmental advocacy, millions raised, and you stand there judging based on cherry-picked examples? The families waiting for clean water aren't cherry-picked examples. They're broken promises. Daniel triggered the next slide bank statements, showing foundation funds being transferred to Jason's production company before major events, the timestamps, and amounts created an undeniable pattern. For the first time, Jason's confident facade cracked. He glanced off stage toward his financial advisor, who had suddenly become very interested in his shoes. Your foundation reported spending $4.2 million on water projects in Southeast Asia last year. Bank records show only $1.3 million reaching those communities. Americans deserve to know where their donated dollars actually go. The room's energy transformed as attendees processed the evidence. Former supporters began edging away from Jason's inner circle, unwilling to be associated with the unfolding scandal. Every organization has administrative costs. We've helped more communities than any other celebrity foundation. 1 or 2 delayed projects don't define our work. It's not 1 or 2. It's 11 communities across 3 continents still waiting for promised aid. Jason's foundation director stood from her seat, all eyes turning toward her unexpected movement. Her voice shook slightly. The concerns being raised deserve transparent answers. Our foundation will conduct a full audit and make all findings public. Jason's face registered shock at this public abandonment by his trusted director. The cameras captured his momentary loss of composure before he regained control. Daniel advanced to the final slide, an internal foundation memo discussing how to leverage project announcements for maximum publicity while maintaining flexible implementation timelines. Complete silence enveloped the venue as attendees read the damning words. Even Jason's most loyal supporters couldn't ignore the implications of the internal document. Documents can be taken out of context. My commitment to environmental causes is absolute. Anyone suggesting otherwise is pushing a political agenda. Karoline stepped closer to the microphone, her voice clear and unwavering. The cameras zoomed in as she delivered the line that would be replayed on news networks for weeks. This was never about politics, Mr. Momoa. It's about the difference between performing charity and actually being charitable. The room erupted in murmurs. Several major donors stood and walked out. Journalists frantically called their editors, requesting prime space for breaking stories. You've obviously planned this ambush for weeks. Why come after me and not the dozens of other foundations with similar structures? Because you specifically attacked my integrity last week while standing on a foundation of deception. Accountability matters, regardless of fame. Daniel played the clip of Jason's original attack on Karoline, his words now returning with devastating irony. Politicians like Leavitt have no right to question those doing actual environmental work. The audience's expression had transformed completely. What began as a room supporting Jason had become a crowd stunned by evidence they couldn't ignore. A board member approached the stage. In light of tonight's revelations, I'm calling for an emergency board meeting and complete financial review. The crowd physically distanced themselves from Jason, creating a visible representation of his fallen status. Camera crews captured the powerful image of the once surrounded celebrity now standing isolated. Rather than press her advantage, Karoline simply nodded respectfully to the audience and walked from the stage. No gloating, no excessive comments, letting the evidence speak for itself. Reporters swarmed Karoline and Daniel as they moved toward the exit, shouting questions about next steps and potential investigations. Jason's team huddled in crisis mode as sponsors began issuing statements, re-evaluating their partnerships in real time on social media. Morning news shows led with the confrontation footage. Momoa's foundation under fire screamed across chyrons. Nationwide, financial analysts dissected the foundation's structure, while entertainment reporters covered the celebrity fallout. Polling showed a dramatic reversal. What began as 76% public support for Jason had flipped to 68% believing Karoline's evidence raised legitimate concerns. Her foundation transparency trended globally. At a brief press conference, Karoline maintained her composure amid the media circus. This was never about bringing down Mr. Momoa or his foundation. It was about ensuring that donated dollars reach their intended destinations. Americans are incredibly generous. They deserve to know their generosity isn't being misused. Within days, 3 major celebrity foundations voluntarily announced independent audits. Entertainment industry publications began investigative series examining charitable foundations throughout Hollywood. Jason canceled scheduled appearances, his usual social media activity gone silent. Industry insiders reported him regrouping at his Hawaiian compound away from public scrutiny. The foundation's board issued a statement announcing a complete leadership restructuring and independent financial audit. They promised full cooperation with any governmental inquiries into past financial practices. Financial publications sought Daniel's expertise on nonprofit accountability. His thoughtful analysis avoided personal attacks on Jason, focusing instead on systematic improvements needed across celebrity foundations. Water charity organizations reported a surge in donations, with contributors specifically requesting verified project implementation and transparent financial reporting. Rather than capitalizing on her newfound fame, Karoline returned to her regular duties, declining most interview requests. When questioned about the confrontation, she consistently redirected focus to the importance of charitable accountability. After a week of silence, Jason released a written statement acknowledging administrative oversights while maintaining his environmental commitment. The carefully worded statement stopped short of a full apology, but announced his resignation from the foundation's board. The foundation appointed a respected nonprofit executive as interim director, who immediately announced plans to fulfill all outstanding project commitments within 6 months. Coverage evolved from celebrity showdown to nuanced discussions about philanthropic responsibility. Op-eds praised Karoline's approach as a model for constructive accountability. Entertainment industry leaders formed a committee to establish transparency standards for celebrity foundations, directly citing the confrontation as their catalyst. Despite offers for book deals, speaking tours, and television appearances, Karoline maintained her focus on substantive work rather than leveraging her newfound fame. Satellite images confirmed construction finally beginning in several communities previously promised water systems. Local leaders expressed cautious optimism about the foundation's renewed commitments. 3 weeks later, Jason made a subdued appearance at an environmental conference. His prepared remarks acknowledged learning difficult but necessary lessons about organizational oversight. Government oversight committees announced hearings on charitable foundation transparency, crediting the public confrontation for highlighting systemic issues requiring attention. In a rare personal interview, Karoline's colleague described her reaction. She never wanted to embarrass anyone. She just believed people deserved the truth about where their charitable dollars were going. For her, seeing actual water projects finally breaking ground in those villages was the only victory that mattered. Entertainment industry analysts noted a fundamental shift in celebrity charitable practices, with transparency and project verification becoming paramount in foundation marketing. 6 weeks after the confrontation, a major industry publication ran the headline, "Momoa Moment Changes Hollywood Philanthropy Forever," signaling the lasting impact of what began as a personal confrontation. The setting sun cast golden light across Karoline's office as she reviewed the latest reports. The 11 communities previously promised water systems by Momoa's foundation now had functioning filtration systems. Real change had finally reached those who needed it most. Daniel entered with coffee, placing a newspaper on her desk. The headline announced the entertainment industry's new foundation transparency standards, now being adopted by nonprofits nationwide. Your stand changed things. Truth did the changing. I just refused to back down from it. Invitations to high-profile events continued arriving: talk shows, conventions, political fundraisers, all wanting. The woman who had stood up to Hollywood, most remained politely declined in her drawer. What began as defending her reputation had catalyzed a movement for accountability that extended far beyond one foundation or one celebrity. Charitable giving had actually increased nationwide as donor confidence improved. Karoline closed the file containing the final resolution of the foundation investigation. The system had worked not perfectly, not quickly, but ultimately truth had prevailed over fame and influence. She deliberately placed the file in her completed drawer. There would be other battles, other moments requiring courage. This chapter had closed with positive change, the only outcome that truly mattered. No viral videos, no triumphant speeches marked the conclusion, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing children drank clean water who otherwise wouldn't have. That families had health who otherwise wouldn't have. That promises made were finally promises kept. As dusk settled outside her window, Karoline turned her attention to tomorrow's challenges. One victory didn't change the world, but it proved that standing firm for truth could still matter in a world of appearances.